Hi, Eric.
Hello.
Hello. How are you?
Good. How are you, Rachel?
I'm doing good. So far, it's just you in the session, and we're 1 minute afterwards, so I can get started. Uh,
Okay.
Let me see something real quick though. One second. I'm just looking at something real quick in Zoom. What is today's date? June 26th. Hmm. Well, we had 6 other people signed up today, so we'll see if they join.
Okay.
Um, all right. So my name is Rachel Lighty, and I am the Director of Compliance Education here at FutureFeed, and I do these live training sessions every week. So there's 2 service provider training sessions that we would recommend you go through. Um, in in the training overall, we end up covering all of FutureFeed and the main important capabilities, tips and tricks and stuff like that. But there's a lot to cover, so we did have to break it up into 2 1-hour sessions. So this is service provider session number 1 training, and then you would, after today, take some time to kind of apply what we covered or explore the tool a little bit more, complete some activity, and then sign up for the second session whenever you feel like you're ready.
Okay.
Okay. Because today we're going to cover like getting started with FutureFeed and putting that information into FutureFeed. In the second session, we cover conducting a basic assessment, so assessing the information you have in FutureFeed, and managing your system POAM and reviewing the SSP, all that stuff.
Okay.
Cool. So let me share my screen here.
I'm definitely signed up for your second session right after this one, so I'll probably just not show up to that one.
Oh,
And
well, I mean, that's fine. Wait, is it right after this one? What?
yeah, it's literally
No.
right after this one, unless I signed up for the wrong one.
Oh, you know what you did? You signed up. If it is the one that's right after this one, then you must have signed up for the service provider training session number 1. And then my next session is end user training 2. We
Whoops.
cover similar content.
Okay.
Actually, the same content as just instead of speaking to you like a service provider, whereas maybe you're providing consulting services or managing a compliance package for your clients. Are you a service provider?
Kind of. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So in that training, I just speak to people like regular users of the tool. So I mean, same stuff.
Okay.
Okay. So now I'm sharing my screen. And I just come from a training session, so I have to, all right. So when you log into FutureFeed, once you get a few clients that are using FutureFeed, you would see that when you log in, you would land at a page like this. So each one of these is a different client, or each one of these is a different compliance boundary
Mm-hmm.
assessment scope. It's one environment, and it's going to produce one system security plan, one system POAM.
Okay.
We're going to use this training subscription environment today. So if you only had access to one environment, you could see when you log in, then you'd be presented with this screen. You wouldn't even see the listing of all of the tenants you can access.
Okay.
Um, Land here, it's on the compliance dashboard, so just a nice little graphical representation. Hold on, I gotta move one of my Zoom screens around. Just a nice little, graph representing current compliance status overall, semi-interactive, so you can drill down to, um, here I'm in the incident response requirements down here. I can switch to configuration management, and then drill down to the objective level. If I wanted to jump to the section in my system security plan or in the assess page for this specific control, you know, just click those buttons. They'll bring you to those sections of FutureFeed. This assessment prep center, what this is, how this would be used is, think of it as assigning responsibility to your clients or your clients' employees to review or provide input to or approve sections of FutureFeed. So we refer to all of the pages, most of the pages in FutureFeed as subway stops. So here are all the pages of FutureFeed. And let me go to like the contract manager page. So first, let me clear out this data because I did it in an earlier training. Yours would be blank like that. All right. So here, I would assign this page to someone at the company that knows of or can obtain the contract data, contract information, contract manager page. This is where you're going to be documenting cage codes and the different contracts that the client is holding that, you know, is driving them to implement NIST 800-171 or CMMC.
Yep. Okay.
And so, right, this makes sense. Like I'd assign this page to my contract manager, whoever that is. Let's say it's Pam. Now Pam can get in here and fill out this information and review it, mark it reviewed and done, get it approved if they would like. It's really hard to do initials on here. Okay, so now all of the pages have this little compliance review box, and this is the information that ties back to that assessment prep center, this page. So if I go down to contract manager, there it's been approved by me today. So this is just a view of all of the compliance review, all of these compliance review, what would you call these pop-ups, information tables, all of them together in one page. Okay, so you can control and assign out here, or you can do it individually as you saw. Reset all. This critical dates page here, this is for planning, specifically planning for CMMC. So if you have clients who are working towards CMMC here, when are they starting to implement the requirements and prep for that assessment? When is the actual assessment? When are they going to have that assessment engagement with the C3PAO? If they had an assessment and they had findings and they were POAMable findings, then they have 180 days to fix and remediate and validate that. So what is that time frame? When do they earn their certificate? And then certificates are good for 3 years. So when should they start prepping for that next assessment? Also, so we're still all in this dashboards area. So just play around. But here you got 2 pages then to view responsibilities. If I want to see all of the things in FutureFeed that are assigned to me, I'm going to click on the individual. So
your internet cut out for briefly there, by the way.
Okay. All throughout FutureFeed, I'm good now, right?
Yep.
Okay. All throughout FutureFeed, you can tag people as responsible for doing stuff. And so to view them in one page, mine anyway, here they are. I can see all of the requirements or the security controls that are assigned to me, any technology, documentation, security documentation, any of the tasks that you can create in FutureFeed if I have any, and then all my POAM items are here. So if you're in the business of managing your client's team for them or checking in on them to see how much they got on their plate and if they're doing stuff on time, you know, here you could see anybody who has an account to your FutureFeed environment will be shown here. And then you can see, if you click on the name, you can see what they have assigned to them. So that's the dashboard area of FutureFeed. Then let's go over to the start area. So in the start area, you're filling out a lot of high-level information about the company and about the system. You're going to start building out the top portion of your system security plan where it talks about the company and the system, who owns it, who maintains it, that type of stuff. So we have a company information section where you upload logo, contact information, address, pretty self-explanatory. Down here, this is the risk appetite. So it's really the only place in FutureFeed that mentions risk. And here is where you would identify your client's approach to handling risk. And then where this information comes into play is within your system POAM. So as they're prioritizing remediation efforts or compliance efforts, getting something compliant, they factor in, impact, effort, and cost, as well as risk tolerance, all that stuff. So here's where you would help them define that. All throughout FutureFeed, we have these little informational green dots you can hover over for some additional information. Oh, I forgot to say this, but every page has these getting started guides. So here I'm on the corporate data section. If I click on this, I'm going to see the corporate data user help guides. So, we kind of give you like the bottom line up front, the TLDR. Then why are we collecting this information on this page? How to fill it out? All that good stuff. So every page has those. Sorry, I got sidetracked. And if I go to the company description, click on it, then I'm just seeing the company description. So if you have questions about something in FutureFeed, you could look there in that page.
Okay. And then like for the required fields and stuff like that, like revenue, is that actually required or is that just like can that be left blank? If that makes sense.
Page is that on? It does look like it's a required field. Okay, but it's not required. You could leave this blank.
Okay.
This little asterisk, if you see that, that means that information is being put into the system security plan. I
Okay.
was not around when they designed what goes into the system security plan. I wouldn't have included a revenue information in there, but I do know they are reworking the system security plan, by the way. So even though, like, let's say this data gets captured in your system security plan, if you leave it blank, when you generate the system security plan report, so in a Word document, that section is just going to be blank. Go ahead and find it and then delete it. Or it can just be left blank. I'm sure that's not an issue. But what I'm trying to say is there are other things you're going to see that are part of the system security plan, which some people don't want it to be part of the system security plan that you give an assessor. And so we're making it so you can choose what sections, what fields you want to go into that system security plan that's in development right now. But yeah, you could leave it blank. It just would be empty in the SSP. Company description, I mean, pretty self-explanatory here, NIAX codes description. Down below, you have an area to identify your clients as cybersecurity budget, IT budget, if they have one. And also this is where you would identify for that client, insurance, cyber insurance policy, what does it cover, dates, that type of stuff. I mean, you could choose to fill this information out or you could choose to leave it blank. Depends what kind of services you're offering your customer, I guess. So locations is important. This is where you're going to start defining your compliance boundary or that assessment scope, CMMC assessment scope, if you've heard of that. And you're in your compliance boundary, in your assessment scope, you're going to identify all places, people, and technologies that have to meet NIST 800-171. Okay, so if you're working with a client who has some physical location that is storing, processing, or transmitting CUI data or FCI data, then you would have physical locations. I've heard of people being in an all cloud environment and they don't print data and they can't copy locally and all that stuff, save locally. Then, if you don't happen to have a physical location, you won't put anything here. There's a different area for you to log cloud environments. But just new location and then provide the information. After you provide the information, click on that location and then fill out as much of this metadata as you want or wish to. Highly recommend, always getting somebody, a team or a person assigned as responsible and accountable. That would be my recommendation. I'm going to go over all these sections here: connect, compliance, task assignments, evidence, these things. I'm going to go over them once we get to the tools section, because it just makes for an easier explanation and demonstration. But I do want to point out that these two locations, these entries, we call these inventory items. Okay, so if you read any help desk material or watch any of my videos, they're inventory items. These specifically are location inventory items. I think of them as folders or records, right? But really think of it as a folder, and you click on the headquarters folder, and now you have a bunch of areas to define data, upload more documents into the folder. You have a whole nother sub evidence folder where you can upload and house documents. You can create tasks, and some compliance data. So these are location inventory items. And then when we get to the tools area and the documents area, these are tool inventory items. These are document inventory items. So locations, you're starting to define that physical boundary. Maintenance and ownership, this is high-level description of who maintains all hardware and software and who owns that hardware and software. If you want to see how, recommendation on how to write that up in the compliance implication section, here's a little example of how you may address that. Scope. Okay, so here you're starting to define your system, giving it a name, a unique identifier, identifying the type of system it is. And I have definitions for the type. These, if you're curious and you don't understand what those are, just again, getting started guides, it's going to tell you what those mean. CIA impact. Over here, the confidentiality, integrity, and availability impact ratings for your environment. If you're working with someone with CMMC, really, CMMC only cares about the confidentiality of CUI data, and to do how they identified the requirements that need to be implemented. So how they identified the requirements that should be part of NIST 800-171 is they pulled from a moderate baseline of controls from 853, and then they tailored them and modified them and scoped some in and out. But that's too much information. All I'm trying to say is I would leave this as a moderate, or move it up to a high if you want for any CMMC clients. And then integrity, availability, if your client has the client availability, clients want, so you would determine those with the clients. Number of users. Again, I understand this goes into your SSP and it can change quite frequently. So it's up to you guys if you want to try to maintain that number or just leave it blank. Boundary. Here's where you're describing the system and you're describing the boundary of the system. So that compliance boundary, that assessment scope boundary. Contracts. I think we covered this. Any questions here? Can you hear me? Did I lose you?
I can hear you.
Okay, all right. Oh, hi, Melanie. Hi, welcome. Did you just join? I'm sorry. I'm on. screen today, so I can't see the Zoom. I don't know when you popped in.
I joined about 10 minutes ago. I was a
Oh,
few
okay.
minutes, so sorry.
Okay, well, hi, welcome. Yeah, I'm just gonna continue on, but know that this is being recorded. And so after I end the call today, you'll get a link to the recording if you want to try to watch that first 10 minutes.
Thank you.
All right, data inventory. So here is for your clients, where they need to define for this environment, the type of data they're handling. Is this an FCI environment? Is it only an FCI environment, or is it FCI and CUI environment? FCI, once you start adding your technology up here in tools, okay, once you start logging the different assets, the technology assets, like you see here, then over under the FCI data inventory page, under the start area, you see the listing of the assets. And then you'll be able to toggle on and off. Like, yes, what is this? Database. My Oracle database does store, process, or transmit FCI data, so I'm going to leave that to an on. My Active Directory does not do that, so I would toggle that off. And everything that's off is down here if you want to change. Okay, so FCI is pretty simple, straightforward. You're just identifying the FCI assets. CUI here, a little bit more intricate, more detailed. So what we're doing here is we've listed out all of the NARA categories. If you went to the NARA website, you'd see these categories. And let's pretend your client has this. They have international agreement information for the DoD. And so it's CUI data. If you want to learn more about that, click on it. It brings you to the NARA page, okay, to include how to mark, because there's a marking requirement, so you might need to refer to that. And it tells you if it's basic or specified CUI. So all international agreement information is always specified. Well, I should say international agreement information that falls under this dissemination authority is always specified CUI. Okay, why I'm calling that out is because if I go back to this page, you see we have CUI basic or CUI specified. So I don't think anybody would I don't think an assessor would even pick up on this, but maybe if it were me, I'm just trying to say that if my client had this information, I would check that box. Because there is no CUI basic according to NARA. So it's not part of a DoD category anyway. All right, so check that box. Now, this is saying that in this environment, they are storing, processing, or transmitting international agreement information somewhere. It's not giving specifics as to where it's housed and all that. You can get that detailed. That's when this little wrench shows up here. But to get that detailed, what you'll have to do, oops, sorry, I accidentally hit back. What you'll have to do is go to a tool, go to one of your technology assets like that database and associate it with this category. So let me show you how to do that. I'm going to go back up to tools. Let's go find that database that we said. On-prem. Okay, let me search for it. Let me search for it at a high level. You guys saw that, right? Okay, I'll have to look into that. All right, so what was I trying? Okay, let me go to a different database. Let me go to, do I even have one? Anything that stores data. Here, let's say in Jira. In Jira, I'm storing CUI data. So over in my compliance section, I have to see this little CUI icon. I have to click on that. Well, it's not letting me click on it right now because this asset is not a CUI asset up here. You do have to have it identified as a CUI asset, meaning it is storing, processing, or transmitting CUI data. Then this icon becomes clickable. And now if I go into here, let me find that category again. So international agreement information, click the CUI specify, okay? Now if I go back into my data inventory under my CUI section, now I have a wrench there. So now I'm painting a more clear picture. That whole CUI data flow thing, you know, you could use this to help you document that and kind of plan it out. But now if I click on the wrench, I'm saying that within my environment, this JIRA tool is storing, processing, or transmitting international agreement information. So it is your guys's decision. If you just want to leave a check in the box, you can do that. If you want to get a little more detailed, that's how you go about doing that. Sensitive data page. So some of our clients like to track other data, other sensitive data types other than FCI and CUI. Maybe they have HIPAA data, maybe they have employee personal information, PII, and they're being proactive and they want to track and make sure that gets secure. To do that, this sensitive data page, scroll down to the bottom and you can create your own categories here or log other categories other than FCI and CUI. Settings, this platform, you can integrate with your ticketing system. Okay, if you ever have, by the way, if you ever have a FutureFeed issue and you need guidance, email support@futurefeed.co. That's going to create a help desk ticket with us and someone will process that and respond to you. So if I have this enabled, then where I'm going to see this capability is I'm going to show you in the POAM section. Here I'm under your FutureFeed POAM. In this section, there's this little envelope icon. So here I could email my ticketing system and I know I changed it, but it does take a minute to propagate. I'm being a little too fast, but I could email my ticketing system about this one POAM item here. And there's even a place for you to add more notes if you need to do that. So if you can click on it, that means it's enabled. If you can't click on it, it's not enabled. And just a trick here is that you could put anybody's email. You can put any email in there. Okay. So if you happen to be working with a client who doesn't have a ticketing system or you don't have a ticketing system, nobody has a ticketing system, and you want to I've seen it where some of our service providers, they'll set up a shared inbox email, distro, whatever you want to call it. And the client then will, the person access to that email. So you know, you could email updates. POAM goals. So in FutureFeed, when a POAM entry gets created, it will be filled out with a due date. And here's how you control what that due date is. This is how many quarters out. And note though, when you do create a POAM item in FutureFeed, you can open that POAM item and change the due date. So this is just default. So that way it's preventing the issue of, hey, you created a POAM, but you didn't set a due date and now we're not tracking towards anything. Okay. Organizational scale. This is what you're doing here is you're standardizing the language. This, I think, is more valuable for our service providers in FutureFeed. I used to do consulting and at one point I had like 21 clients. And I struggled to kind of keep the client information separate and, oh yeah, that's this client. Oh yeah, but this is going to help you at least with impact, effort, and cost. So for that specific client or for that company, what does a low cost item look like? Okay, maybe $500. What's a high cost item look like? And you can see how this scale then would be used. really this information, impact, effort, and cost in FutureFeed, you're going to find it in your system POAM. So all POAM items will have impact, effort, and cost. All projects will have impact, effort, and cost. And so when your client is prioritizing remediation efforts, they typically will factor in impact, effort, and cost. If something's going to cost some money, maybe we need to push it down the road a little bit. And rob a bank and find that money. So here, the organizational scale, that's what you're doing is you would work with your client or ask them to fill this out. And then once it's set, that's kind of everybody's understanding. Everybody's working from the same instructions. Especially when it comes to creating POAM entries. Like if I created a POAM entry for an environment and set impact, effort, and cost, but my coworker also created a POAM entry and set impact, effort, and cost, we're going to have, that stuff's going to be all over the place. So you need to standardize it and make sure everybody has speaking the same language, right? Now, when you set this, then where you can refer to it is up here in the organizational scale. I have to refresh my page and maybe give it some time to think here, but this also takes some time to propagate. Let's see, I changed the first one to 500. Let's see. Okay, there it took. So then you could refer back to this here in this little ruler icon if you need to, especially when you're working within the system POAM, you may need to refer to it. All right, so that's the start area. People. So let me pause there. I'm doing pretty good on time. I usually talk too much and then go over. I have a little less than 30 minutes left until I have another meeting. So do you guys have any questions on things I've covered so far?
No, I don't, not specifically. I'm drinking from a fire hose over here trying to get caught up and
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, not from you. Just I have stepped into the middle of our CMMC process as an MSP. So not only are we trying to go through CMMC ourselves to get certified, but we have 2 clients that we also have to get through the process as well.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm trying to do it from both sides of the fence right now. And, it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah, for sure. For sure it is. I'm I love FutureFeed, okay? But I'm not just saying that because I'm working for FutureFeed.
Right.
Like I used to do CMMC consulting, and at one point I really did have 21 different clients. That's a lot of different documents to manage and evidence, and it's a lot. So I guess it's a good thing and a bad thing, right? Okay, so the people section, again, we're going to cover people, tools, and documents, and I'm going to stop there today. In the second session, we'll cover the rest of the areas here. People, this is where you're going to create accounts or give access to your FutureFeed environment. Just add new user. Are they an employee, third party? Are you working with an assessment team? And this is an assessor who wants access to your environment for the purpose of seeing the evidence and the SSP. You have to be an administrator to create an account, but pretty self-explanatory. Hit add, give them the level of access. Right now, we just have standard admin and assessor roles. We are working on deploying a more robust role-based access scheme or maybe some discretionary based access in the tool. But right now, we just have these 3 roles. No access, what this is essentially you're just logging a person in FutureFeed. You're creating a list of employees for that client in FutureFeed, and why you would want to log someone as no access is because then in FutureFeed, you can assign that person responsibility really clearly, all right? So for example, I'm going to jump over to roles here. Here you have some roles. This is where you're going to define your security roles. Well, if I click this box and I want to identify who the HR lady is, who she is. So here's Jill's HR. Well, if this list of names over here, you have to give FutureFeed that list of names. And to do that is you're creating that list of names over manage user. So that's what the no record is. You logging them, you don't want to give them access to FutureFeed, so you don't need to create them a full account, but you do want their name to show up in FutureFeed, so that way you can call them out and tag them directly as being responsible for something. Okay. So that brings me to manage roles. You're defining security related roles. Think of all the roles that are going to be involved in NIST 800-171 compliance. We have some default roles here, pretty typical that we see. If you don't want to use one, you can always mark it not applicable. And then we have, define your own. So just add new role, give it, title the role, give a description if you want, and then go down, find that role and identify who that person is that's filling that role. You can see you can have different administrators. You can even have network administrator number 1, network administrator number 2, like, go crazy with it, I guess. But a tip is that in FutureFeed, try to assign responsibility to a role or a team, okay? That's because, let's say, Carrie's my incident team lead, my incident response team lead. If I'm going to show you the incident response requirements. So here's the incident response requirements. I'm going to click on one. And now under this requirement, under this incident response 361 requirement, I'm going to want to identify in this interview section, I'm going to want to identify the people involved or the people responsible for doing something related to this requirement. Okay. So it would make sense that my incident team lead is going to be tagged here. And if I go back to roles, maybe I make an incident response team. Let me see if I have one. I don't, so we can make one. Let's do that. Spell it right, incident response team. All right. Save. Here I'm creating a team. I'm sorry, I kind of jumped a little ahead, but just hopefully you can follow along. Here's my team I created. It's empty. So I have to click on add or remove members, and then I would either add a role. Let's do that. And maybe there's a couple other folks on the team. I can set a team lead. Okay. Maybe we'll well, there was already a team lead, but could be another sub-team lead. Anyway, what I'm trying to show you now is that if I assigned, let me go back to that control under 361. If I responding distance, I'm making the team is responsible for that work. Okay, here they are. I had to refresh the page. But now if Carrie, who was it? Carrie was my incident response team lead. If Carrie quits, okay, and I go over here, they quit. Instead of having to go and remove Carrie from all of the controls that she was tagged under, or all of the documents that they were tagged under, or the tools, I would go here and change out whoever's filling that new position, and then go to the team and change them here as well. So as you can see, if I click this, Bart has already been replaced. Carrie is not there. It's Bart because I changed it in the other screen. And then I could easily change out whoever left from here as well. Now I don't have to go in and find all of these requirements that I tagged Carrie under and remove them and try to put someone else, okay? So the tip is to assign responsibility if you can in the interface, if you can, try to assign responsibility to a role or a team. So that way, when you have personnel changes throughout the years, you can come in here and just quickly change out the names and change out the members of the team. Now, when that person logs in, remember I made Bart my new incident team lead. When they log into FutureFeed in their dashboard area, in their individual dashboard area, they're going to see all of those items that were previously being worked on by Carrie because they're associated with the role and not the individual. I hope I'm making sense. Let me know.
Yeah.
Was that pretty clear? Any questions on the people section?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. Tools, so got about 20 minutes. Tools and documents. I cover them together though, because the interface is very similar. So in the tools area, this is where you're logging all of your IT assets, your technology assets. So operating systems, endpoints, servers, switches, routers, software as a service or any major software that you're using. It's also where you're gonna log any IT service providers and IT vendors. So in the tools area, you're defining assets. In documents area, you're defining security documentation. Both pages have this layout where once you click into the section, like I'm in documents, now we have different categories of documents. Here's working docs, reference docs, review docs. In tools, now I have different category of tools, on-prem, cloud-based or online tools. Okay, so that's like the page layout. And to add either a tool or a document, just hit this plus button. Here I'm in the tool section. If I hit plus, I'm going to be asked, okay, what technology, what tool am I logging? What's the mission to the company or what's the mission to the client? So maybe it's a firewall. And can someone give me a name of a firewall? Cisco is
FortiGate.
FortiGate. Okay, thank you. FortiGate. Perfect. All right. So, what's the mission? What's it doing? What's its purpose in the environment? Give it a model name. You can be more specific if you'd like. Is it in the cloud, on-prem? I have to choose here now because I'm not, if you notice up here, I'm not technically in the online page. If I was in the online page and I added something, then I can't choose. I'm logging an online asset. So just to call that out. But that's how you add a tool is just hit the plus button. Same thing with documents, hit the plus button. Unfortunately, we don't have any like import functionality at this time. So it's a lot of hand jamming, a lot of typing out at first. Okay, because you're going to have to get a listing of your assets that you need to log and think of or put together a listing of the security documentation that you will log. So your assets and your documentation, and then hit the plus button, categorize them, name them. All right. After you add something, then it creates an inventory item. So here are my document inventory items. So let me go back to here. We were going to do a FortiGate. Let's say it's on-prem. I'm going to hit log. Okay, now I got to go find it. We do have search functionality if you got a long listing. Here it is. So I'm going to click on it. So after you log an entry, after you log a document, after you log a tool, and even after you log a location, make it a point then to open up that inventories item folder and then fill out this metadata as much as you can. I mean, there's certain things in here that if you choose not to, like the user count, if you don't want to use that, you don't have to use that. I would recommend though, definitely getting somebody, a team or role assigned as responsible for this item. So who is responsible, who's administering my firewall, accountable, who's that management level person that's making sure my firewall administrator is doing their job appropriately. So who's ultimately accountable for this asset and the configuration security of. Consulted, all right, so who's internal or external? Who do you need to consult? If anything, do you need to speak to anybody about this asset? Maybe consult with them about the configuration of that asset. Informed if there's any issues, roadblocks, anything, does anybody internal or external to your company need to be informed about any changes to that? But, sometimes you don't have someone to tag in all 4 aspects of a RACI model, but I would recommend to try to fill out the R and the A of the RACI model. Okay, sorry, there's a bug on my laptop. If this asset was being managed by a service provider, let's say I'm paying someone to provide me firewall services, they're using FortiGate, it's their responsibility to manage it, configure it, monitor it. Then you have some inheritance there. That's the word the CMMC community is going with, is inheritance. And you should have, or your clients should obtain a customer responsibility matrix from that external service provider. So I would contact the provider of this service, my firewall service, and say, hey, can you give me a customer responsibility matrix that delineates and outlines the responsibility with regards to this firewall service you're providing me? Now, when that happens, then what you'll do, you would go into the documents section. Under reference documents, there's a category for CRMs. First thing you're going to want to do is log that CRM. So let's pretend, okay, I guess I'm overthinking it. I do this. So ABC, XYZ. Company ABC XYZ. They're an external service provider. Okay, I'm logging. I would then remember when you log something, you gotta open up the inventory item. So now I'm gonna go find it. Here it is. In here, under the attachment area, I would upload the CRM document that I got from that external service provider. Once I'm done with that, now I'll go back into my tools, find the firewall. And in this customer responsibility matrix field, I can now see company ABC XYZ. So this listing of CRMs here directly relates to the listing of CRMs in the document section. I was trying to show you that. Okay. So now I'm painting the picture that there's some shared responsibility here. There's an external service provider has some level of engagement here with this firewall. And here is the document, and I can click on it. And it will bring me to, now if you notice I'm in the documents inventory item, I'm no longer in the firewall inventory item, but it will bring me to this inventory item where I could then feed that delineation of responsibility. Okay. Man, I think I'm covering too much. Let's see. And I am producing individual educational videos. I'm fairly new to the company, and we just had a big interface release. It's called the chocolate release. So the interface you're seeing right now, the one I'm showing, is completely different than what it looked like several months ago. So I couldn't start creating the educational videos then because the interface completely changed. But anyway, just to let you both know, I am working on creating smaller, more consumable educational content that covers this stuff. So I was saying, once you create the entry, open up the inventory item, I would recommend responsibility, accountability to be filled out. Over here, let's talk about this connect feature. So what we're doing here is, you're establishing a connection between this inventory item and the requirements. think of it as like you're building out the body of evidence. So your clients are going to need to show artifacts or, give artifacts and provide evidence of compliance. And when you can make these connections, that's what you're doing. You're establishing the connection of this is the evidence, this is the artifact. I know we are in a tool one right now, so it doesn't quite make sense, but I'll show you. Here I would click on add, and I'm going to identify all of the requirements that are basically making me implement a firewall. Geez Louise. We can search by ID or keyword. Let me go with network, because I think one of them says something about network. Yeah, network connections by exception. So this one, I'm going to add that one because this one makes me have to deny all permit by exception, inbound, outbound connection, which typically is implemented by the firewall. So I would identify that one. Another one is probably in the 3.1.20, is it 20 or 22? External connections. This one talks about limiting and controlling external connections, typically done with a firewall. Do you see what I'm doing here? I'm identifying the requirements. In this case, since I'm in a tool inventory item, I'm identifying the requirements that this tool is helping me implement. And if you think of it the reverse way, it's my evidence. It's from an assessor's point of view, that's going to be my evidence. Hey, are you controlling and limiting external connections? Yes, I am, with a firewall, specifically FortiGate. So that's what you'll want to do. And this is a recommendation to, at the very least, if you're not too concerned about filling out some of this other metadata, the recommendation is RACI, responsibility, and connections. And in the compliance field, categorizing that asset, because you'll have to do that for CMMC. So back to the connections though, that's how you make them. You can add connections slightly differently. Okay, so let me remove those. And let's say I have a policy, let's say I have a policy, and that policy says that I have to have border protection, network border protection, firewall system. And so what you can do is you can connect to that policy. And I don't really have a good example here, but let's just pretend. Let's pretend that this physical management policy, or this risk management policy here, let's pretend that this has some policy statements in it that talk about needing a firewall. So if I connect this, now all these connections pop up, because this risk management policy is connected to 14 controls. And by me making it a leader to this inventory item, it's going to inherit those 14 controls. Please ignore the actual controls that got tagged, because it doesn't really fit the example, but that is another way to tag controls. To show you a better example here, if I go to a document, let's say I have these vulnerability scanning procedures, okay? Oh, actually, I'm so sorry to bounce around, but let me show you this way. Here, I have a Nessus vulnerability scanning tool. I have a Nessus vulnerability scanning tool. In the connect area, I have some connections. I'm going to delete them, though. Okay, so instead of me finding the controls that I want to associate here, obviously, let's pretend I know about my environment. Like, I'm going to know how I'm setting things up. But so I know that I have a vulnerability scanning procedure, and I have already tagged that vulnerability scanning procedure to the vulnerability scanning requirements. The reason I'm using Nessus vulnerability scanner is because I have a policy that says I need to do vulnerability scanning. And now when I'm using this Nessus vulnerability scanner, when I do my vulnerability scans, I want to follow the procedure outlined in my vulnerability scanning procedure. So instead of me associating the tags here, if I link to that procedure, now the procedure is connected to these two controls, and now my tool is as well, which this example works better because it makes sense that you would have a vulnerability management tool associated with 3.11.2 and 3.11.3. So that's the leader follower. Now, anything you make a follower, do you remember my risk management policy, the one I just showed you? It was connected to like 12, 13 controls. Well, in that risk management policy, I say I got to do vulnerability scanning. So technically, there's an association between this tool and this procedure and that policy. I kind of want them all to stay together. Well, if I make the policy a leader, what's going to happen is now it's just brought in those 14 other controls, ones like system security plan and POAM. And I don't want to show this vulnerability scanning tool is not at all an artifact for the POAM or a malicious code protection antivirus solution, right? So I don't want to do that. Now I have too many tags and my body of evidence isn't going to be very clear. So now I'm going to remove that risk management policy, but I do still want to have it linked together. So I'll make it a follower, even though it is a higher level document. You can play around with the order of things. But if I make that risk management policy sorry, I must have deleted all the controls. But if I make this risk management policy a follower, it will not pull over those controls. So let me fix this because I see now I'm just inheriting these two that are tagged at the procedure and not the 12 there. So think of it as a way to manage and control your tagging, but also if I'm the system admin and you create for me a task over here, like I've shown you, weekly vulnerability scan, assign new task, run scan. I assign it to the network administrator, whoever that needs to run the scan. If I create a task in this inventory item, because it makes sense for it to go here, hey, now I'm going to get alerted. Actually, Jill is going to get an alert that it's time to run the vulnerability scan. And if they happen to need guidance on, okay, well, what am I supposed to do? Maybe they're a new employee and you want them to run the vulnerability scan per the procedure. They can easily then find and navigate to that procedure by looking at the connected documents, the related documents. So it's not only for controlling your tags, but it also helps you establish relationships between your documents. And if someone needs to look for the associated documents, they can. And I kind of just showed you how tasks work too. So in tasks, you're going to create tasks, and I got to jump. See, I talk too much. In tasks, you're going to create tasks associated with things that need to happen initially to get compliant. And then you're also going to create tasks that support what needs to happen throughout the year. So here I showed you, I did a weekly vulnerability scan. And if they'll ask and they can okay, they can click on the task. There we go. And then they can upload evidence that that task was completed. In fact, you can't bypass the evidence. If you want to close a task, you have to log evidence, which is great because you, on the compliance side of the house, you want that evidence captured and retained in FutureFeed for future assessments. So here you could attach the evidence, link to it, or even create an individual, unique, brand new document or report. And then mark it closed. Let's say we're going to pretend like we're going to create a report, scan done, save, complete, they're signing off. Weekly scan was ran, done. Okay, so now if you remember, I clicked on the task over here, but it kicked me over into the evidence. There's my completed task. If I click on it, it would show me the report. I didn't type up a great report, but it also, so you're logging evidence that the required compliance activity is happening throughout the years. But as you're closing those tasks, you're also logging that evidence that an assessor is going to want to see that you actually did what you said you were going to do. But that's the sections here. So I need to jump for a meeting, and let me just wrap up by saying, if you're just getting started with FutureFeed, whether it's for a client or your own environment, my recommendation to you would be to visit this start area and fill out all of this high level data about the company and the system. And then visit the people area, give access to your FutureFeed environment to those who you want access, and also log the names of everybody else that you're going to eventually bring in for responsibility assignment. Define your security roles and get people assigned to them. Define your security teams and get people assigned to them. Then go to the tools area and start logging your technology. After you log technology, open it up, fill out RACI assignment, connect it to the requirements, categorize the assets, create any tasks that you want. After you're done with your tools, then move on to your security documentation and start doing the same, logging the security documentation. Yeah. Any questions?
I don't
I'm
think
sorry,
so.
that was a lot, but you will get a recording
No
afterwards.
worries.
So that's good. And so your next step is, other than doing what my recommended things to do is sign up for the second session whenever you feel ready. Or if you start doing some of these things and you get a little stuck or you're not sure of the approach, you can always sign up for this session again and then ask some more questions related to the topics covered in this session. During that, you can sign up for as many trainings as you want. Am I sharing FutureFeed already still? You can still see my screen, right?
No, it's just you.
Oh, shoot. All right. Well, I was just going to point out that if you log into FutureFeed, any page, scroll to the bottom, there's two register links. One is where you're going to go to register for the second session, or this session again if you want. And the second one is for us. It's a weekly meeting with me in person, like virtual, and every Thursday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And you just have to register for it once, and then it's on your calendar every week. And so I recommend that people just register for that. Join the weeks that you have questions. If you get stuck on something, you can ask anything there. It's like open forum. All right. So I got to jump for another meeting, and thank you for your time this afternoon, and reach out to support@futurefeed.co if you have any issues and need help.
Okay, we'll do. Thank you.
Yeah. Bye.